Welcome to heCast, the official podcast of He Changed It. As always, I am Mike Chisholm. As always, I am excited to be here to shoot one of these episodes. Especially, I love doing them in studio. I love all the episodes of heCast that we do. They're like little Fabergé eggs in a collection above my fireplace. I adore them. But when we can get to do one in studio, there's just an extra level of energy that comes with that. And I just appreciate it very much, especially with today. We're going to talk to a musician today. And as I've talked about on this show many times, I love music so much, and it's so great to talk to creatives. I think creatives in our world have always been teachers in many respects. And today's episode is going to talk to a very awesome creator who has a very similar energetic synergy to me. And it's going to be a great conversation. But before we get to that, if you haven't downloaded the HeChangedIt app yet, what the heck are you waiting for? Go to whatever app store denomination is on your mobile device, the Apple Store, the Google Store. Download the HeChangedIt app. It's already got lots of cool things in it. Even we're just scratching the surface of what HeChangedIt is going to be, but be part of it. Be an alpha consumer. Grab that app, share it. We've got some great things going on. We've been testing, by the way, our first HeChangedIt men's groups. That's been going very well so far. So lots of good news on that horizon. Other big announcements coming. We're about to turn a big corner with HeChangedIt, and we couldn't be more excited about it. So please download it. If you haven't liked or shared this podcast yet, subscribed, all of those things, those are metrics people can follow, everybody. And we would just appreciate it very much. Our listener base with all the platforms is actually very strong. We're excited about that. And every single time we get a message talking about how one of these conversations helps somebody, helps a guy that's out there going through something, helps a family member of a guy who's going through something, helps them deal with that guy, whatever it is, I can't tell you how much we appreciate that. And we're hearing it more and more. HeChangedIt's going to change the world, and the team is just really energized by what it is that we're building here, brick by brick. So today's episode is going to be another brick in that wall, to steal a phrase from another legendary band. Now, our guest today. I'm really excited to have Rod Black on the show today. Rod is a creative of creatives, and I, again, adore talking to people who have mastered a craft and are taking that craft and using their personal abilities, almost like a vessel to get something out into the world, to create something in the world. And he has done that. He was the lead singer of a band called Jet Black Stare. Now, a lot of history there. We're approaching a very cool milestone with that band. Started out of Vancouver, British Columbia, went all over the world, had some crazy Rockstar adventures. We are going to ask about some of those today. But at the end of the day, when you look at the lyrics to many of these songs, and Rod has been part of other endeavors as well, including some acting stuff and all sorts of stuff. He's a creative of creatives. He's done some country stuff, all sorts of stuff in his career. But at the end of the day, when Rod and I first connected, there was this intense energy that was there between the two of us. And he told me about some of the things that led him to where he is at in his life right now. All of these things leave clues, and he's at a pivotal point in the, maybe for lack of a better term, the ending of a chapter and the beginning of a new chapter. And that's where we met. Phenomenal. And as soon as we told him about what HeChangedIt was doing, he was like, I want to be a part of this. I want to help. I just feel, and it felt so good to be connected here. We're going to talk today about things from the past, but also things from the future and what brought us to where we are right now. An inspirational guy, high energy, a creative, and a guy that I am just so grateful to know. Rod Black, thank you so much for taking time out of your insane craziness that is your life to be on heCast today. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
What was it about, before we get into to the Rockstar, all the fun stuff, and then all the heartfelt stuff too, before we get into all that stuff, when we got connected and you heard about what HeChangedIt is doing, you lit up like a Christmas tree. You just went, holy cow. What was it about what Candy and her team are doing that lit you up so much?
I think it's about time that we talk about this openly. I grew up with all girls, so it's primarily, there's not too many guys in our family. And I think that the guys are always the ones that you kind of hold the feelings. We're supposed to. We're supposed to hold the feelings in, not really cry and stuff like that, and be the strength that, that we can for the others. Like, because I grew up with girls, I was always like the hawk in the nest kind of thing. Oh. Now you see where we're at right now in the world. It's there's a lot of guys that are holding in things, but I think that it's time. Sorry. No, I think it's time. The coffee dried my throat out. I think it's time for men and guys in general to be open with their feelings. Yeah. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I mean, I grew up with a rodeo star and my dad, I guess. Yeah. I grew up and everything. So that's tough cowboys. That's you fall off the horse, you get back up, and you don't complain. You just work. Yeah. And every day you hustle and all that kind of stuff. But the feelings were not out there openly. And when you told me about what you guys were working on, I was fascinated by it, because this is something we need to talk about. Everybody needs to have this kind of platform that's, as a male figure. Yeah. Right. And I think that there's the opportunity for guys to open up.
I appreciate that so much, hearing that. And the team is, whenever the team hears anything like that, it just energizes them and they love it so much. Now, you talk about this stigma that guys have, or this expectation that guys have had. You and I are both Gen Xers growing up. We've kind of been, just like we're a generation that can remember half of our lives without the internet and half of our lives with the internet. And I think that folks, who are 10 years younger than us, they just don't have the same perspective that we have, how much the world changed. I would think that a very similar change is happening when it comes to that stigma that you're talking about here. That being said, growing up in the rodeo background and the cowboy background, the work ethic you're talking about here, clearly that's you. And I want to talk about that in a minute here. But before I do, I want to go into the fact that you're a creative. Mm-hmm. I want to ask about the idea that you were a creative growing up in that environment, first and foremost. If that ever brought any challenges on, I think about the movie Dazed and Confused, and, I want to dance, the idea that you actually wanted to do something creative outside. Yeah. But then also I want to marry this to the idea that creatives, many times, they have the secret sauce to life, because in their creation, they're getting out some of the shit that sometimes builds up over time. Now, I've just kind of thrown the door open to a bunch of different conversations. Mm-hmm. We can unpack it. Does your creativity, when you read the lyrics of the Jet Black Stare songs, this is a heart pouring out, no matter who wrote the song. A lot of these songs are extremely personal. Was that an outlet for you with all that stuff that would build up in other guys, maybe?
Yeah, I definitely can't take all the credit, for sure. We had a heck of a team, but Jeff and I wrote good, probably 90% of that album together. And we were very connected on that level. So we probably had similar upbringings in a sense. Obviously, he wasn't in the rodeo family, but, sure, similar families and stuff like that. And, the strength of a family. We really believed in that, and we still do. So when we were writing these songs, it's like whether Jeff had the idea or I had the idea, we kind of came right in the middle. Like, it was just like, wow, I was thinking kind of the same thing or whatever. So it was easy. There wasn't hard writing these songs because we both got it. There's a bit of a message, right, in these songs, whether we planned it that way or not. That's kind of what happened. And that's what happens when people send us messages or whatever. They'll ask us what's the song about. Sure. And then of course I'll get into the details the best that I can, you know what I mean? Because I want them to have their own, perspective, I guess.
Yeah, you don't want them to necessarily taint the song or whatever.
Exactly.
Because when they took it a certain way, and there's an emotional response to it, you didn't want to affect that necessarily.
Exactly, but you also want to be honest with them, and let them know that, hey, this is what I was thinking, or this is what we were going through when we were writing this song. So they feel that connection, but they also have their own version of it too in their head.
So these lyrics, some of these lyrics, they almost seem like they would be therapeutic, like out of a journal, out of some deep, places and things like that. Is that accurate? Like when you wrote, did you, when you penned some of these lyrics, and of course they're modified or whatever and changed to melodic or what, but the basis of them, when you're putting these lyrics down on the page, is it therapeutic?
Definitely. For instance, the song Fly. So when I brought that to Jeff, he was asking me, what's the idea of this song? Yeah. Because it's talking about leaving a situation to a better place, but not forgetting where you came from, in a sense. And it was because I was working in this, I think I was telling you this, I had many jobs. I worked in the stock market. So I was doing investor relations for a company down in Vancouver. And so instead of having a vehicle, well, in downtown Vancouver, you can walk anywhere. I was in English Bay. So every morning I had to be at the office at 5:30 pretty much. So I would walk down past some of the homeless. Well, instead of just walking by them, I would have conversations and kind of become friends with them.
Yep.
And there was always this common denominator, I guess, if you will, in various conversations. And it was always, I wish that I could leave this place. And then they tell you a little story of why they got to that place. But they have visions of where they can. And I had this idea of like, wow, like fly. It's like, get away from a situation you're in, right? But that you got into that situation for a reason, right? So unfortunately, whether it was drugs or whatever the case is for homeless people, or maybe just a bad upbringing, whatever the case is. And I do believe we all get a chance. We deserve a second chance, if you will. And so I started writing Fly, and it was that whole of, you know, I want to leave this situation to a better one. But again, you know, I've got to learn from, you know, from that one situation to the other without getting into too much of a babbling situation.
No, you're not babbling at all. And I think that right there, you've hit into you've hit a real nerve.
It was a personal connection.
Well, and there's a lot of guys out there right now who wish that they could do that. You know, they've gotten themselves into a place of, you know, we've talked about it a lot on the show here, because one of the major pain points that men are going through right now is a purpose, lack of purpose, not knowing their purpose, not living their purpose, maybe knowing it, maybe scared to fly for that very situation, embarrassment, whatever that might be. And I want to talk about, because you talk about, you know, where you came from. And I do want to go back to that. You know, the rodeo, the farm, these things. Now, let's just talk about your youth growing up, because we're going to talk about your dad. I mean, my goodness, are we ever going to talk about your dad and some of these things that have led you to becoming who you are now? Powerful stuff. Growing up, would you say that your situation was unconventional, and did it lead to the work ethic that you have now?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to be talking about my mom, because my mom's, I think I was telling you that earlier. That's my true angel. And we'll get into that at the right time. But I always felt I was a little different. And I think it was, I always just felt like I was in a protecting role ever since I was a kid.
A protecting role.
Yeah. And I always wanted to be around the adults. So my parents were always like, well, go and play with the cousins and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, yeah, but I want to be around the adults. And that's that old soul, I guess. But also a very protective type role. I'm watching my dad, and he was just like he had so many talents. Like, you know, he was a mechanic, you know, he was breaking horses. He was an outrider for chuck wagon racing, right?
This is in Alberta, right?
No, this was Saskatchewan.
Sorry.
Well, he was born there.
Right.
See, I was born in BC, and we moved around a lot and stuff like that. I was young when he retired, but he never technically retired. You know what I'm saying? But it runs in the family, but there was never any pressure from my dad.
Yeah.
Whereas I think he kind of wanted to do that. He said, if I'm going to have a son, I'm not going to pressure him, because I felt just in conversations with him that he was pressured, because he was a guitar player and he was a writer. Wow. He was a heck of a writer. He wrote after my dad passed, we found songs that or poems that he wrote, and we were like, wow. So yeah. So
I got goosebumps.
So yeah. So you can imagine growing up in that era, knowing there's something else you want to do, but the family bloodline is all rodeo and cowboys and being on the farm and milking cows and the whole 9 yards. Yeah. But he'd sneak away to go play his guitar and write. And he never wanted to show that to the family, because I'm sure they knew he had that talent. Yeah. But then he just didn't feel he was encouraged. Whereas with me, whatever you want to do, son, I got your back. So my dad was my hockey coach and stuff like that. Of course, I was, you know, the hardest worker on the team, because I don't want to be like, oh, the dad, you know, dad and son thing, right? Yeah, so I'm like, I'm first one on the ice, last one off at practice kind of thing. Yep. You know what I mean? Lead by example, if you will. But my dad never put pressure on me, and nor my mom. My mom never did too. And I can't imagine what it was like for her, because now she sees the only boy in the family, and you know, knows that there's something else that I want to be doing, music and all that kind of stuff. That's the creative in you coming out, right? Yeah. And knowing that my dad would play guitar for her and all that kind of stuff, and you know what I mean. So she knew that this one we gotta let him kind of do his own thing.
I got to ask you this. And I mean, you know, have you ever performed any of your dad's songs or poems, or is that something that you're going to want to do in in future endeavors?
Well, yeah. So what happened was before my dad passed, we had pretty in-depth conversations, and that's where I found out a lot about stuff that Dad did not want to tell me, but he did. And the one thing is, he said that there'll be some songs, there'll be some words, there'll be some whatever. And so Sadie and I, my sister Sadie Black, and I'll get into all my family and stuff like that, my sisters and stepsisters and stepbrother. But Sadie and I have that connection because we're both artists. And she said, well, did you know that I found some lyrics? Because she stayed with them. She was in New York actually on tour, and she was doing her thing. And I was in Texas, and my dad was getting sick, and we were back and forth. And she goes, I'm gonna go take care of Dad. You just do what you got to do. And I'm like, well, of course I couldn't concentrate being on tour, right? Having this big record deal, and that's a whole different story there. So she went and stayed with him. Of course, she would see these lyrics and all that kind of stuff. And then she said, well, we should write a song with Dad because we know he doesn't have very long to live. And Dad always wanted to be a writer. So we wrote a song called Gabriel Road, where the place where we learned how to ride horses. Grandpa, you know, no saddle for the kids. You learn the real way of riding. You know what I mean? Build that strength.
Yeah.
But anyway, long story short, we ended up writing a song with my dad before he passed, and we actually have recorded it, and we just haven't put it out yet.
Wow.
Yeah. But it'll be the very first song that Dad will get writing credit on.
Oh.
Yeah. Something we wanted to do for him and for our family.
You know, you talk about the stigma that many men feel. It feels like you've just kicked the crap out of that stigma and said, well, no, it just doesn't exist in your life. Did it ever exist in your life? Was there ever a time? Because I mean, clearly this creative part of you is a part of you living your purpose. There's no question about that. But it's evolving and challenging you and all sorts. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but this is stuff that you and I have learned as we've built our brotherhood. Was that always encouraged? Were you always a person that could take these things that might be against the grain or against the stigma? And because I mean, you're a hockey kid too, like Saskatchewan, okay, good old boys. But yet at the same time, it feels like you've never been afraid to put this side of you out. Is that a fair statement? Or was there a pivotal moment where you gave yourself permission to kind of go against the grain when it came to
when I was 11, maybe 12? Because when my parents got divorced, that really shook me. Yeah. Because we were kind of the family. And actually, when watching that interview with Kim, there were some similarities there, major, because our family was the kind of family, we had people coming from, we didn't, sometimes it was just people that just moved into the area. And my dad doors were always open. We were cooking for people. We were that kind of family that everybody came to. And then when they got divorced, that shook our foundation. And of course, that foundation wasn't there because then everybody's moving and all that kind of stuff. So, but I always knew, like I said, there was something a little different. And by the age of, I think, 11 and 12, I was telling my friends, I'm going to get a record deal. Why? Who talks like that when they're that young? Right. And they're making the deal with my dad with the tattoos. I think I told you about that, you know. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, you can get a tattoo if you get a record deal. He's like, get a record deal. What the heck's this guy? You know, because all my friends were always older. I always had older friends. Yeah. And so I think that probably I just felt more connected, I guess, being an old soul. So when I'm 11, 12.
I loved hanging out with my dad and his friends. Yeah. I love that. And I would just sit there as they were, you know, wherever they were, I would just be a sponge and I'd listen to them talk about ridiculous stuff because they, you know, no internet back then. So people's BS could just fly, especially you get a group of guys together. I was in my element at that. Yeah. Was you too?
Oh, definitely.
You loved hanging out with
all the time, hanging out with my dad and his friends and stuff like that. And even when they, you know, they'd be just, you know, the hood would be up and they're all in the garage talking and stuff like that. I'm passing tools to my dad and stuff. And I'm just a little guy. Yeah. When my dad's looking and he's seeing my friends are all like playing and I'm in there with the guy and he's like, well, why don't you go? And I'm like, I don't want to say bored. I wasn't challenged enough. I always felt when I was around my friends, I just wasn't challenged enough. They're talking about toys and whatever and stuff like that. And, you know, I always felt like I was doing it almost just to be a part of it because I needed to have friends. You know what I mean?
Yep, 100%.
But I felt more connected to be around older people. Our neighbor, he was, what was he? I don't know how many times, World War I veteran, I do believe. Oh. So you can imagine his stories, right? Wow. And all my friends are like, why do you always go to Mr. Phipps's all the time? And I'm like, because I'm fascinated by his, I'm a little guy and I'm like wanting to learn.
Yeah.
Right. And some of my friends just didn't understand. And then I felt at the age of, I think 13 is when I put my band together. And then that's when I was like, and they're just, I'm like, we got to show up at practices. We're like, we're kids here. And the parents were always like, why is Rod being so pushy about rehearsal and stuff? You guys are kids, like, you know, and I was always I felt like I was on a different level when it came to my friends. And it wasn't a smarter thing. Trust me.
No. It was different.
Yeah, it was just different.
Yeah.
It was different. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I learned a lot from my friends too. And one of my best friends still to this day, Stu Deal and his family, he was the drummer. We were 13, 14 years old. He's still one of my best friends.
Were you the singer right from the start?
Yeah.
Yeah. You always knew sing and guitar.
Dad brought me every instrument known to man. And he's like, drums, that lasted one day. Although I wanted to be a drummer. Yeah. That was what I wanted to do. I was fascinated by being a drummer. And then, like listening to Elvis, and we got the Johnny Cash wailing, we got the records playing and all that kind of stuff. Right. But then remember, I was a late bloomer too. And I think I told you about this.
You did.
Which was kind of scared the family. I'm the only boy and I'm not walking. I'm not talking. I'm not doing what a kid's supposed to be doing at an early age, but I'm kind of jumping back going back a bit. So they were a little worried there. And so,
knowing you, I feel like you were listening and observing. That's
just kind of
that's my initial just instinct to that.
They couldn't understand because my cousins were a little older than me and they were moving around. And when they put me down, my knees would buckle and stuff. And my dad was a little worried, but he's like, the doctors just said, once he gets going, he ain't going to stop. And that's what Dad always said. He goes, I'll never forget the doctor says. He goes, don't panic. He's just, once he gets going, just trust me.
I can't imagine you. Okay, I got to be very, I'm going to qualify this statement. I can't imagine you not being a collaborator and somebody who wants to do things with people. I can't imagine you being that way. But there's the qualifier. I cannot imagine you not being a front man. I just can't. I can't imagine that. And so by 13, you would kind of embrace that.
Oh yeah.
That because it is an attitude, right? Like, I mean, I think about some of my favorite bands and the members of them, because I'm kind of that same way. I'm a bit of a peacock. I like to spread my shit, right? Like I'm the same way. And I identify with the front man of the band. That's who I identify with. But there are, if it's a 5-member band, there are 4 other personalities and roles, and they got to kind of equally be wired for those things. They don't want to be that. Did you knowingly embrace that? Is that something that you just naturally been and always just been that? Have there been times where that has come into where you've had some imposter syndrome, like, should I be that guy? Is that ever have you always kind of known you're a front man, you're a leader? It's
kind of funny you say that, because like I said, I wanted to be a drummer.
Yeah.
So I have mad respect for any band I'm in. The drummer and I always become close. If you don't have a drummer that can play, it doesn't matter how good of singing the guitar or whatever. If you don't have somebody who can keep the timing, it's not very good.
Yeah.
But let's not go into there. But so I have mad respect for that, and Tex and everybody behind the scenes.
Absolutely.
I love being like in the film. I love working in the film. I love working behind the scenes. Right. Whereas in music, I'm in the front. So I loved it. And I think what it is, there's a mutual respect.
Well, and that's that collaborator I was telling you about. Like, the qualification statement wasn't just fluff to say that you're the front. No, you love collaborating. You're that guy too, right?
Love being part of something.
But that being said, you also are naturally, you're the guy who leads something. Like any Jet Black Stare footage that I've seen, you are the lead. Like, you're that guy. You embrace that role, being that front man. And it's just, it fascinates me, because many times people with that type of spotlight, people can very easily make judgments. People can very easily make assumptions, that kind of a thing. And they don't necessarily know the real person that is there as well, right? Like, it's very front and center, but can also be very lonely at the same time. Have you gone through that?
Yes. You're reading my mind. One thing that I can say about, I love being in front of people. Yeah. I think we played for 30,000 and we played for 5. It's the same show. Yep. It's the heart, it's the soul, it's the energy, whatever. And but it's after I get off stage. I'm not a big people, you know what I mean? I'm more having a conversation with somebody, right? And wanting to know about their life, because I'm inspired by other people's energies. I think we've talked about that, right? And that'll we'll get there.
Sure.
Reason why I probably have had that through my life. But I have so much respect for what another person does, and I want to learn more about it. So it almost throws people off a bit because, again, you look at singers and they do unfortunately get that, what's that, stigma? Is that the word?
Yeah, stigma.
Of kind of attitude, and you can't talk to them, and kind of, or the guitarist.
Oh yeah.
And I never wanted to be that guy.
Yeah, you're not a diva in any way, shape, or form.
I want to be very approachable.
Yeah.
And if you feel like a connection is going on, feel free to open up. I will open up with you if I feel there's a connection.
Yeah.
So when you're on the road and you're at the merch booth and there's a lot of people, and they're like, I can't believe that we get to meet the band. And you know what I mean? And right away, I'm like, okay, well, let's move that aside.
Yeah.
What do you do for work? And then all of a sudden you have a friend that you've made. The hard part is you only have so much time.
Yeah.
And there's all these people that are wanting to chat with you and have a conversation, and you feel like you want to have that connection with them. So they get something out of it and you get something out of it. You might never see that person again, but you want them to feel something, not like, typical singer, just, sign this and then walk away.
Yeah. You're one of the most authentic people I've ever met.
Well, I appreciate
I don't know how long.
I do appreciate your kind words.
Yeah. But I mean, that's where we connected. Is authenticity. So it's a silver bullet. You and I both know that, but we also took a journey to get to that place. And so I'm curious, did you learn that along the way, or did you already know that? And the moment it went from 5, like did you, when it was 5 people, small venue, and they were coming to you and you were making these connections with them, then did you just continue that on? Was it something that you had an aha moment as you guys got bigger and the crowds got bigger and the shows got bigger? Was that something that, that connection thing that you're talking about that is so valuable, was that always there? Or did that develop as you developed?
Since I was a little kid.
Wow.
And you know what? And
Saskatchewan boy.
It stemmed from something very interesting. And this is, again, not a message that I'm trying to get out there or anything, but this is just who I am. I grew up in such a tough type of family that, like I said, you fall off the horse, you get back on, and you don't complain. So now you can imagine, as I start getting through elementary school, seeing people being bullied.
Yeah.
I would come to their defense without even thinking of it. And I'm a pretty small guy, you know what I mean, back then. And I'm still probably, you know what I mean? A lot of my friends were bigger guys and stuff like that. So I would go against my friends that were bullying the new kids at school. And I always had this underdog feeling that I'm going to be in the trenches with them. So as that started progressing, as I got older, when everybody was like, oh, that person's like that, I'm like, I want to be their friend. I want to be down there with them. Just like when I'm down and out, I want to know I can confide in somebody.
Someone's got your back. And
so I planned it all along. I was like, if I'm going to be an entertainer, I'm not going to be the guy that doesn't have time. You know what I mean? Obviously, we have to, I have to go rest my voice and all that kind of stuff. But I always wanted
You're going to be mindful though and aware.
I want to be, I want to be very aware of their situation, respectful of their situation. And sometimes people just want somebody to listen to.
Yeah.
They just want to be able to talk to somebody and know that they're actually genuinely listening to them. Not so much giving them advice and all that kind of stuff. So it started me basically protecting new friends at my school from the bullies.
Yeah.
And showing them that they can fight back, but I don't mean fists. Do you know what I mean?
100%.
Stand up for yourself.
And helping and empowering people to do that. I mean, that's what HeChangedIt's all about is trying to create that awareness that we're talking about. And then once you have that awareness, then to take a step, whatever that looks like, to stand up or move towards that awareness, whatever analogy you want to use. At this time, I got to bring it up. I got to bring up the Flatline experience because I know this was a very pivotal moment in your life changing. How old were you when you had that experience? And can you walk us through? I know you've talked about this in other interviews and things like that before, but it is pivotal, and I am fascinated to talk to you about it on camera for our audience as well. So I'm sorry to make you retread this again, but
no.
But that's a big moment in your life, right? How old were you, and what happened with the near-death experience?
Well, I just turned 19, and this was the ultimate wake-up call for me. And I think, I've had a lot of things happen before that when I was younger, but I didn't really catch on. And I think that's why I was felt a little different.
Yeah.
But then this is what really just woke me up. Yeah. Just turning 19. I've been kicked out of many high schools in Saskatoon. where Kim's stomping grounds are, which I found fascinating. Yeah, I was basically trying to save. I was kicked out of high school. I had a year that I had to be away from the school. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to get a job and whatever, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And my mom's car broke down. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to help her get another vehicle. It was only a $1,500 vehicle, right? And back then, you know what I mean? I was like, you know what? I'm not really paying, a lot of rent and stuff like that. I'm going to help save up some money and help her get a car.
Yeah.
So, but I knew I'd have to work long hours. So I worked at this pizza place. So now when you're a teenager and you're out in Saskatchewan, you're at the pits and you're having drinks every weekend, your body is used to, having alcohol. Well, I hadn't had any alcohol, nothing like that. I'd been working for 3 months. And long story short, I ended up going to a party. Yeah. And there was a big jug of like moonshine, 190 proof moonshine. Now, it was more of a joke at the party because, I can say this now. Unfortunately, my buddy Dan has passed on. But he broke into the parents' liquor cabinet. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you've heard these stories many times before. And this was something that no teenagers should have been drinking. But so the jug was sitting there. I saw these girls. I was talking to them. They're saying, oh, everybody's just passing it by. They're lighting the beer caps on fire because it's 190 proof.
Yeah, that's it.
No one's actually drinking this stuff. Yeah. No one's crazy enough. Well, of course, I'm trying to impress these girls. And they're like, well, we dare you. And so I grabbed that jug, got on my knees, and I just started drinking it like it was water. And everybody's like, what? Everybody was shocked, right? And I pounded it down like that. And there wasn't very much left. And I was like, okay. Now, because it was such a rush of alcohol in such a short period of time, I had, probably about in maybe an hour. You know what I mean? The band's kind of just, guys are jamming music and stuff like that. And
wait a second. So you actually negotiated your way around the party for about an hour after doing this?
Probably about an hour. Yeah, that's what I'm getting at, right? So to me, I felt, I don't know how to explain it. I knew something was going to happen when I did this because I had a lot of premonitions and stuff. And I think I was telling you about that as a kid, but I didn't understand that kind of connection, if you will. A lot of stuff that there's no way I should even made it to 19, right? Yeah. Of some horrific car accidents and all that kind of stuff. But now I'm in a situation going, what did I just do?
Yeah.
I know how much I just drank. Yeah. That's in my system right now. And so it was almost like fight or flight. Like I'm like, I can do this, but I knew it was going to hit.
Okay. So the red warning lights on the dash were on. In your mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
I knew, right? I knew, but I was like, oh, what did I just do? And then all of a sudden I wake up to slap across the face, and it's my buddy Brian, and everybody left the party. And I was he found me kind of, my legs were up like this and my back's like this in a corner by a bookshelf. And he's like, everybody's looking for you. Everybody went to another party, left the house, and he came back and he found me. Firemen me up the stairs, and this is where my mom, my angel, takes place. She is across town with her friends dancing. I was staying with my mom. I was about to go move with my dad because of the divorce. I went with my mom, and that's a whole story where the boy goes with the mom, which is kind of an odd thing, and the girls go with my dad. Very odd. Devastated my dad and the family, that's for sure, at the time. And so I was in the midst of going to go move in with my dad. I was like, we're going to rekindle everything. Like, this is great. So I was kind of staying at my mom's between getting ready to go to my dad's. And my mom had intuition, mom's intuition, female intuition. I do believe it's very strong. There's a reason for that. Yeah. She stops her dancing and stuff like that, goes, Rod needs me. I got to go. Now she's across town in Saskatoon and we're in Sutherland. And she races back, puts her purse down, her keys down, stuff like that. And she's at the door and she's kind of like, okay, guess I was wrong. She's about to leave and she hears some rumbling on at the door. And she's like, what's going on there, right? Because she knows I have my keys. So she's like wondering what's going on. She opens the door and it's Brian, these two girls holding me up. And she looked in my eyes. She goes, what's wrong with my son? He goes, oh, Linda, he's got to go and we're just going to put him downstairs and he's going to crash. I got to go to this party. And she's like, no, he's going to the emergency right now. They're like, no. Because he was trying to get my keys out. If my mom wasn't there, he would have got my keys out, opened the door, put me in my bed.
That would have been it.
Yeah. And that's what the doctors said too. But anyway, I'll get to that. And so we race, and it took my mom some convincing for Brian, because he really wanted to get to this party. She's like, no, we're going. So we get there and it was chaos when we got there. I got strapped down. There was like arguments with the police. There was just so much going on. And so my buddy Brian was holding my wrist, and then I just hear everybody out of the room, we're going to lose him. And all of a sudden I feel this hand kind of slip away like that. And all of a sudden I hear this dee.
You heard it.
I heard it. And I felt the most, sorry, if I get a little emotional, sorry, because I feel
okay.
like sometimes it's.
You wouldn't be the first in this room, sir.
Yeah. This is where I was like, okay, well, now Rod, you know what you just did. Like I'm talking to myself, hearing this thing. And then all of a sudden I'm in the best place I've ever been. I'm, without getting into a spiritual conversation, what I saw was most fascinating. It wasn't like I walked to the gates and said, oh, it's not your time, son, go back. It wasn't anything like that. It was greenish, bluish lights, very hazy. I still experience certain things on a daily. There's energies right now. I don't freak anybody out, but I'm just being honest with you. I believe change is coming. Yeah. And for the ones that get it, will get it. And anybody out there that's listening to this will know what I'm talking about. It was the best feeling of my entire life. And so there was a lot of unexplainable things that kind of took place without getting into too much and babbling. But there was things that I saw. And the best way I can explain it is if you were walking towards a mountain and you're looking at the mountain and it's pitch black and you just saw shadows of like heads behind that mountain, like thousands and thousands. So you don't see bodies, you just see kind of the heads. Yeah. And that's how I felt. I felt that I was embarking on something that was bigger than I could even explain. Now I wake up and I'm like, oh, that was a dream. I'm still drunk, by the way, obviously.
How much time has passed?
Probably a good, I think about 2 or 3 hours.
Okay, so it's been a little while since that beep. It's been a while since then.
Yeah.
And okay, yeah.
So now I wake up and there's nobody in the room. It's a very cold, chilly feeling. And I'm like, okay, I am in a hospital. Like, this isn't a dream. I'm pinching myself. I used to have nightmares when I was a kid, so I taught myself lucid dreaming. That's a whole different story.
Yeah. Knock on the wall, or you pinch your, yeah.
Because you dream within a dream within a dream. Like I used to have twisted stuff, and it really effed me up as a kid. And then until I learned how to lucid dream, and then I was okay, knock on wood. So what happened was, I'm like, okay, I got to collect my thoughts here. Like this is, you know what I mean? So nothing sobers you up faster than what the heck just happened.
Right.
So this girl walks in. And I guess the candy striper girl, or is that what they call them? Back then they did. Yeah, they did. I don't think now you gotta. It's like, no, that's not what they call them. No, that's you can see Betty Boo and all that kind of stuff at the strip club maybe, and she might be wearing that. Oh, the Texas days.
Betty Boo, the candy striper. The candy striper. Welcome Betty to the stage.
Yeah. Betty. So Betty Boobs. Anyway, so sorry, a little bit of humor. So what happened was she walks in. And she's looking at me like she saw a ghost. And she goes, how are you doing? And I'm like, I'm okay. And I sit up and I'm just like, whew, okay. And I sit off to the side and like this. And I'm starting to talk to her. Yeah. And she's like looking at me really weird. And I'm like, and I've got this energy going. I'm like, why is she not like kind of talking to me? She's almost scared to talk to me. Boom, she bolts out. I'm like, what is going on here? And so
it's always a good sign when the
I did forget one thing. As she was leaving, I said, is there a doctor that I could speak to? And that's when she kind of freaked out. And what? And then so the doctor comes in and I'm sitting on the side of the bed. He sits down beside me. He goes, son, how are you feeling? I said, well, I'm a little dizzy still. And he goes, oh, you're still, you're still going to be drunk a little. And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, you sure scared us last night. And I was like, yeah. And he's sitting there and he puts his arm around me kind of thing. He goes, listen, I don't know how to explain what happened last night. He goes, I've been a doctor for 30 some years. And he goes, can I ask you a couple questions? And I'm like, yeah, for sure. And I'm like, and I got this energy. I'm like, what is going on? Like and again, when I was a kid, it was like 10 steps ahead. I could never understand how I knew certain things were going to take place.
Right.
But they were, but when you're a kid, you're wondering, well, how do you like, it was almost like this is just, it was too coincidental.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
But then as I got older, then I realized, okay, there's something else going on here. So I'm sitting there and he's like,
back when you still believed in coincidences.
Yes. Yeah. Now it's a little different. Yeah. So, and he goes, well, how are you feeling? I said, well, I'm a little drunk. He's like, are you a religious man? And of course I go into, well, when my parents were together, we used to go to church. And then when their parents, you know what I mean? It kind of devastated the family or whatever. He goes, because I can't really explain what happened. He goes, but all I can say is someone up there is really looking out for you. And I'm like, oh, okay. And he's like, no. He goes, you don't understand. He goes, you came in here. And he goes, do you remember anything? And I said, yeah. I said, remember there's a lot of chaos going on. You guys, I remember you strapping me down. I remember having a hand on me. I would imagine it was Brian. He's like, yeah, your buddy, Brian, with the curly hair. And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, yeah. And then the hand slipped away. And then I heard it, dee. And he's looking at me kind of like,
You heard that shit.
yeah. So you can imagine what he's thinking.
Yeah.
Because he's got questions.
Yeah.
He's probably got other people that he's got to go attend to.
Yeah.
And he's like, because I can't explain it. He goes, so what happened was, he goes, and I said, yeah. And then and he goes, did you hear anything else? I said, yeah. Everybody out of the room, we're going to lose them. And he's looking at me kind of like, okay, how is that you, like, he's trying to put this all together. And he's like, because I've never seen anything like this. And he said, he goes, well, the good news is you're going to leave this hospital in probably an hour or 2 hours from now. We're going to get you some food. And your mom's sitting out there in emergency or whatever waiting. And your mom's pretty startled. I said, yeah, how's she doing? She's like, oh, she's pretty rattled. She goes, but, you know, your friend's there and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm sitting there and I'm trying to like put this all together. And I'm like, okay, this isn't a dream. This doctor's like, but I'm like, okay. So then he goes, because when I said everybody out of the room were going to lose them, you went down like flat, like that. And he goes, so we called it. But then when you came back so fast, it startled everybody. And he said it was like the best way to explain it's like you came running off the street. And you're like, it was just like, he goes, usually it's a slow progress, but it came shooting up like it shocked everybody. That's what he said. And I was like, oh, okay. And he's like looking at me, he goes, but what's crazy about this is that anybody that's flatlined, we usually do tests or they have some kind of brain damage or some kind of something that usually goes on, right? There's an effect to it. Yeah. You're about to leave this hospital within a couple hours. I said, good, I got to go back to work because I'm saving up money for my mom's car. And he's like, whoa. Exactly. He goes, you need to slow down. I said, no, you don't understand. So I started telling him about how I'm saving up money for my mom's car. And he's like, wow. And then he goes, your mom, there's a connection. And I said, yeah. And I started telling him, if it wasn't for my mom, and he goes, yeah. And he goes, I talked to your mom. He goes, your friend was going to put you. He goes, son, if you would have went in that bed, you would have never woken up. So of course, now he goes, we're going to do some tests, get you some food. So we leave. And as we're leaving, everybody's kind of looking at us. And mom's like, grabs me. She goes, we got to get out of here. She goes, I'm getting really freaked out. People are looking at asking questions. So like, you're literally walking out of this hospital from what the chaos that ensued last night. You know what I mean? And I'm like, okay. And that's chapter 1 of that. That continued. The horrific car accident shortly after that with no seatbelt, 7 times into a farmer's field. It just kept on happening. The fire that I should have been at, the house practically burns to the ground kind of thing. And I should have been in there, but that wasn't. There's all these things that took place and we could be here for a long time talking about them, but I don't talk about this as a bragging thing. I talk about this as the journey, but it also makes me stronger,
right?
And lessons learned.
What? Okay, so I want to, because it all mixes in with your music career too. Mm-hmm. It all does. The ups, the downs.
I feel like I'm a vessel. I really feel like I'm a vessel.
Right.
No, that's the best way to explain it.
I know that there are a lot of guys out there who might feel that, but they've got themselves wrapped into whatever life.
They're afraid to share.
Yes. And so you feel like there's purpose and that you are being used as a vessel for that purpose and going through all of these ups and downs, adventures, whatever you want to call them, to be that vessel. To guys right now who are not living their purpose or they're feeling like there's an itch there, like what you're talking about. Any advice for guys like that? Any insights?
Well, don't let age be a number. That's one of the biggest conversations I ever have is like, well, I'm too old for this. Or here's the flip side. Or I'm too young for this. I don't have enough experience.
Yeah.
So why would you let that age be the factor?
Yeah.
Because if you do that, then whatever that moment you're in right now, there's your excuse.
Yeah.
Right? Why would you use that why would you use that as almost a stepping stone? So whether you feel you're too old, then it's like, okay, well, look at everything, the wisdom that I have, and look what I've learned along the way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? A lot of people here's a prime example. This is the best way to explain it. People in high school, you're full of life.
Yep.
Parties, energy,
Sure.
everything. You're writing poetry. You're playing guitar. You're
Lots of firsts.
First, you're driving.
Lots
You're
of
getting
driving
your
a
first.
car. Yeah, whatever that
Exactly.
is. Yeah.
It's exciting.
Yep.
But once you come out, you feel the pressures of now there's going to be bills.
Yep.
Now I got to go to college. I've got to. So all those passions that you had, right?
Yep.
Friendships have dwindled or whatever. And so
Yeah.
sometimes that's meant to happen, right?
Sure.
We meet people
Seasons.
for,
Seasons of life. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Seasons of life. Go back, and I'm obviously talking as someone that's older. Go back to that moment, how you felt, that passion. Go grab those books and whether it's the diaries or whatever you were doing, your log books or whatever and stuff like that. Go back and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because you didn't lose that talent. That passion isn't gone.
No.
You just have used an excuse that's basically a society type thing.
Yeah.
Once you get to a certain age, now you got to do this. You got to do this. You don't have to go out and have fast cars in the garage. You don't have to have, keep up with the Joneses. You don't have to have that mentality. You have to have this. You have to have a belief in yourself. Are you really doing what drives you? Yes, you're a father and you have kids, or you're a husband and stuff like that. And yes, there's responsibilities. That's life.
Yeah.
We all have them.
Yeah.
But don't forget the passion that got you to where you are.
Who you are.
Right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that would be my thing, is don't forget what got you to that place.
If every man did that, if every man actually did a little bit of introspection and actually asked themselves that question, what is it that drives you? What is it that sparks that passion? And was able to answer that question authentically, I think we'd be in a much better place. Because guys, we talk about this a lot. Awareness is a key. And there's so many people that just aren't aware. It seems that you were granted awareness, life awareness, this bigger type of awareness through all these experiences you've talked about, and the flatlining certainly being a dramatic one. How old were you when you moved to Vancouver and Destiny with Jet Black Stare started? How old were you during?
Well, that's interesting, because I was 21 and I remember I was just moving to actually Richmond, BC.
Yeah,
and that was. Got there to the house.
Was that the music scene? Was it the music scene that was calling you and saying, yeah, I'm going to...
Yeah, I always knew I was going to go back because I was born in BC.
Yeah.
I always knew I was going to go back to BC. I just, I was very, wanted to stay there, kind of mama's boy, if you will.
Sure.
Right? Because mom was pretty devastated when the divorce took place, right? And, my sisters went with my dad. And I went with my mom. So I was helping pay the bills and all that kind of stuff. But as I got to a certain age, I think the flatline thing really... changed everything.
So this is 2 years later.
Yeah. I was like, I got to get out of here.
Okay.
I lived in Edmonton because I was just turning 19. So I was living in Edmonton. Then I can't forget about that, because that's some crucial stuff there too. And that was not so much those kind of situations like flatline and all that kind of stuff. And I don't say that as a throw off. That's just kind of what happens in my world, I guess, in a sense, is that I just kind of look at it as it's just in a moment.
Yeah.
Right. And very cherish every day. But a lot of lessons were learned, we'll say, in Edmonton. But I always knew I wanted to go back. And when the fire took place, and when the firemen were like, well, you were supposed to sleep in that room. And I'm like, yeah, but I stayed at my girlfriend's. I never stayed there. And I'm going into the details. He's like, that room was untouched. All the band gear and everything, because that's where my buddy Dan and I stayed, in the band room, right? Yeah. We had built bunks and stuff like that. Like we were ready to on a tour bus, right? I was setting up for the tour bus, I guess is where I'm going.
That's fantastic.
Get used to being on a bunk. But I was like, wow, okay. The flat. I started going through this in my head. I'm like, okay, another one, Rod, that you're surviving? I'm like, okay, you really better hit high gear now and hit this music hard. So then I did. I started going to studios. I started writing more, and I started finding that passion.
Yep.
But it didn't happen right away. When I kind of think that's when it would happen, there would be record companies and all that kind of stuff. It didn't happen at a young age.
Yeah.
And so I was just always feeling guilty because I was, you're late for rehearsal, or you know what I mean? I was like almost like a dictator in a band. I didn't want to be that guy, but I also wanted to find guys that had the passion that I did. So then I started kind of taking the foot off the gas a little when it came to the whole band kind of stuff, and just saying, okay, still have fun here, Rod.
Yeah.
You still got to have fun. So I pulled back a little bit. And then, I had odd jobs here and there and stuff like that. But Jet Black Stare was basically a country rock band. I was wearing a white cowboy hat.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And that's kind of probably why I went and did the country. I did for my dad too, obviously. And there's a whole story there. I wanted to kind of leave something with my country music, kind of, a tribute to my dad and the rodeo family and the toughness of growing up in that kind of family. But it was a country rock band. And then, when that happened, that was pretty amazing, because now I'm like, wow, who am I? Because now I'm in this rock band, but then all of a sudden, again, when I get the record deal, the same day I'm getting this record deal, I find out my dad's sick. So I'm like, you get this big record deal, everything you've worked hard for, telling all your friends you're going to get this record deal and everything, and it doesn't mean anything.
Right.
Everybody still to this day said, you never actually celebrated, if you really think about it. Because all my friends that I work with know, they're like, you never really actually celebrated. We did as a band,
sure,
but I never did anything kind of celebrated a milestone, because all I can think about is the moment that I signed that deal is the news I got from my dad. So that was,
and dad was sick terminally. That was the news that you got.
He had about, I think, 4 years left at that point. Yeah.
So they're limiting his time, and at the exact same time. So a part of your life
want to tell me.
Yeah, well, and that's what I was going to say. They didn't want to tell you.
He did not want to affect his son's excitement,
because he saw what was about to happen for you.
But I knew on the phone there was something not right.
And so, I mean, and not just, it's not just you as a solo act. You got people all around you who are depending on this. This is a life-changing thing. It's going to lead to all sorts of adventures and prosperity. But you're an integral part to that, obviously. And yet at the same time, you're at this crossroads of life.
I would have gave it up right there. I would have ripped up that contract to have my dad say, Anyway,
if it wasn't for the people around you, is that what it was?
I basically would have, to have him not say those words to me. You know what I mean? I would have easily, if I could have made a deal, I would have said, okay, you know what? I worked here. I got what I've said to my friends when I was 11, 12 years old.
You've accomplished that.
I've accomplished that.
Yeah.
But to have my dad's health trade off, it would have been, I wouldn't even thought about it. I would have been like, done. Okay, my dad's healthy. I'm happy. That's all that matters. But and so, I don't really have any regrets per se.
No.
But one thing that I always felt bad is I was not honest with the guys in the band. The drummer, Dan, my roommate, he knew something was up, because I was, we go and play for thousands of people, and I'm in my hotel room crying. And he's like, what is going on?
Yeah, we're having the time of our lives here and you're not. And
because I didn't want to let anybody
down.
Yeah. But I also wanted to make sure I was focused. My dad's like, no, you stay out there or whatever. I'm okay. And I'm like, Dad, I know, you know what I mean? And so you feel that guilt and all that kind of stuff, right? And the pressures of everybody, there's 5 people that are all getting a piece of the pie, and you know what I mean? It's a lot, right?
At this point, who are you opening for? Where's the band taking you at this point here? Because you're in festivals and all sorts of opening situations for some big bands. Who are some of the stuff at this point here that you're opening for or being a part of? Is the NASCAR thing happening at this time and all of that?
Yeah, everything.
So Ready to Roll is out at this point?
Yeah, Ready to Roll went out. That wasn't even going to be the first single. The first song was It's Over, actually. Yeah. And then Jeff and I ended up writing the song called Ready to Roll, and that changed everything.
It became an anthem.
Yeah, it became an anthem. And it was weird because, and I always go back to my family. So my dad and I used to go to hockey games. We go see the Regina Pats.
Yeah.
And I always said, and I was like young, and I said, Dad, one day I'm going to have a song on this playlist. So that was my goal, and that was achieved. Whether we had major success or not, the label expected us to, but then the economy, and that's a whole thing there. But I got to achieve that. And Dad knew that, because I said, before my dad passed, he goes, yeah, I remember we used to be at the Regina Pass games, and you'd say, Dad, I'm going to have a song on that playlist. So and it became Super Bowl, NASCAR. And,
all of that. Ready to Roll was huge. For our viewers and listeners here, jump on the YouTube. Jet Black Stare, Ready to Roll, sports anthem, this kind of thing, blown up, touring with all these bands, all these things here. There's a question that I haven't asked you. I wanted to save it for the podcast, and it's here now. I hate that we have to kind of start wrapping. You're going to come back here for part 2. Obviously, the story is way more. You love what HeChangedIt's doing. We've got some great things coming up, including where you're going to perform. We'll be able to put you performing out in some of the things that we're doing and projects and stuff. So don't worry, Rod he's a HeChangedIt guy, and we're partnering in a lot of ways here. So this is just part 1 today. Bit of an intro there, but this question that I've always I've wanted to ask you since our very first conversation, and you told me about what happened with your dad and this internal struggle that you had for a while.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I've never asked you this. Your dad got a chance to see you thriving
Mm-hmm.
in something that would have been a dream for him.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you considered the fact that your dad did get a chance, even though his light was fading, he did get a chance to live vicariously through you?
Mm-hmm.
Have you considered that before?
Oh, yeah.
And has that given you any comfort knowing that you were living your purpose, but it was also giving dad
It's always on my shoulder.
it is. Yeah. Okay. So that is something that you have.
It drives me because
It drives you.
Yeah, it drives me. And, back to the app and the reason why I was so attracted to it and I felt the passion when we were sitting down talking with Candace and Mike, and we were just having this incredible and never meeting each other.
Yeah.
And thank you, Shauna. By the way, you
Shauna
are a
Whitney.
true rock star.
Shout out to Shauna Whitney.
That girl.
Absolutely.
Amazing. But what I did was I used that passion and everything and say, you know what, Dad? Okay, I know you had pressure because there's a lot of stuff Dad and I talked about before he passed, and he did want to be a guitar player. He wanted to perform, but he was too shy. So when he sees his son, he wanted to encourage his son, knowing that he couldn't do it. But yes, he vicariously, I guess, yes, living through that. But he also knew that I was in it for the right reasons as well. And Dad was like that too. Dad was never driven by money, by fame, by anything like that. He was a rodeo star in a sense. So that was his thing, but there was a lot of hard work that went in.
Oh yeah.
In the,
yeah.
true.
That was
being
a
on the road
of incredible
gypsy.
skill. Yeah. The incredible skill, rising to the top and all of that, the work that it takes.
Yeah.
Well, to do anything, to be a rock star, for lack of a better term, to be a rocker at that level, again, the work ethic that is necessary to get to that place is incredible. Clearly there are parallels here.
Yeah.
But the fact that he couldn't ever do that and he's watching his son go and do that. I mean, I don't know a dad out there who hasn't taken their son in particular to a sporting, to a little league, hockey or whatever. And they want to see them just be a champion at something because they feel it a little bit too. Right. And he got a chance to see that you were on that roller coaster for the right reasons.
Yeah.
God, that's an incredible thing.
It drives me. It does. My family in general.
Yeah.
Right. I want to take care of my mom when she's older and stuff like that. You know what I mean? I don't need a lot. We've talked about this, right?
Yep.
Just give me a bus and a bunk and I'm happy. But the thing of it is well, really, apple doesn't fall very far from the tree. I can see my dad going, yeah, boy, that's my son. But the thing of it is that, again, when you're driven for a purpose, and my dad was very much like that. And I have to say this to kind of, as segueing into the next part, is that my dad was always the guy that never really opened up. He was known for that. But yet he would be my dad was sick just coming out of the hospital again for the 10th time. And he's on a guy's roof because there was a leak because of the rain. And my dad's like,
yep.
I'm like, Dad, what? You're on a roof? He's like, well, the neighbor, needed help. And the thing was, but to have an open conversation of how are you feeling today? I'm great.
Yeah.
No, Dad, come on. And so the reason why I was so attracted to what you guys are doing is because we need more people and men in general to open up more. Talk about their passions, whether it was back in high school or it was a week ago and they came up with an invention and they're afraid that it's not going to be successful because they got the pressures of life and bills and piling up and stuff. But it's okay to open up. It's okay to cry.
Yeah.
It took me a long, long time. And because my dad never was the crying type. Yeah. You know what I mean? I was a fighter in hockey and my dad, you know what I mean? I was going after the biggest guys all the time. He's like, Dad, check this out. This is my coach. He's like, that's my son. But the thing of it is never showed when I was hurt, never, you know what I mean? Never complained about anything. But it's when my dad passed and that's when the emotions came out and stuff like that. It's like, you know what? It's okay. It's okay to open up and it's okay to talk about your feelings. And it doesn't matter if you're a male and whatever. That stigma of being a male and you're tough as nails and no, we're all on the same playing field. Every color, race, everything. We're all on the same playing field. We all have emotions. We all have goals and dreams and passions and stuff like that. Yeah. And so it's okay to share them.
Speaking of sharing, I wish that I could talk more about the things that are brewing and all of this kind of stuff. We can just kind of tease a little bit. The Jet Black Stare story 15 years is coming up. There's an anniversary that's coming up here. And I guess all I can really say is chess pieces are being moved where chess pieces need to be moved in another Jet Black Stare chapter. Is that like safe to say? Yeah. Safe to say, and they're going to at least celebrate at least the 15-year deal of your guys' run and some of the fun things that's coming up, right?
And guess who I owe that to? Pops. Because before he passed, he said, you did Jet Black Stare for everyone else, because he knew what I was going through. He's like, I don't know how you held that in and not told anybody. I said, Dad, because I didn't want to recognize. He's like, oh, that's my son. You know what I mean? Yeah. It was all for other people. That's the way we were raised. It's, well, I'll take the scraps. Dad and I were like, we'll take the scraps as long as the girls are okay in our family. Yeah. Well, you know, with the hawk of the nest, right? The protectors. But what made me really want to do Jet Black Stare again was I knew the 15-year anniversary was going to be coming up, and this is right before COVID, unfortunately. But I knew those words that my dad said. He goes, you'll know when the right time is. Oh, you'll know when the right time is. But I said, Dad, I'm going to do, because but he also said, you did Jet Black Stare. Why don't you go back to your country roots? Yep. And I said, Dad, I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to put that black cowboy hat on, because my dad always had a black cowboy hat. You know, I said, always in black. He drank his coffee black. Like that was that, like that. You know what I mean? He was that guy. And I said, I'm going to do it for you. And he's like, yeah, but don't ever forget about Jet Black Stare, because you're going to know when the right time is. Yeah. And so I did have that conversation right before COVID, actually. Said, Dad, it's time. And I felt that energy and everything kind of falling into place, like you said. Yeah. And I was like, okay, it's the time.
That's all you're getting.
Yeah.
But as Johnny Carson used to say, more to come. More to come on this, and I'm excited. I'm gonna close this thing off by getting you to tell us a Rockstar story, because we all love hearing Rockstar stories on the road and all that kind of stuff. You toured with crazy, lots of connections in your life. We're not gonna necessarily name drop, but at the end of the day, you got to live the Rockstar lifestyle in your way. You were prepared for it in many ways. It's beautiful that you don't have some of these tragic stories that people who were not prepared for that lifestyle and all these things have. I love you. I appreciate you so much. You're a brother from another mother. So before we get to that, if anybody wants to connect with you and your music and your social media presence and any of that stuff right now, if people want to follow Rod Black and go down the Rod Black rabbit hole a little bit, what's the best way to do it?
Well, you can go to, again, JBS. Well, actually, the Instagram's probably the best.
Instagram? What's your Instagram?
Yeah, it's Jet Black Stare Official.
Jet Black Stare Official. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And you're throwing stuff up there, and if people want to dive down the rabbit hole, they can.
Yeah, there's actually the story that I'm going to share is actually a buddy of mine who's actually in the picture.
Okay, so yeah, let's hear it. What's
so okay, so what happened was, no, you have to put this in perspective here. Okay, so I just finished working the stock job.
Yeah.
So I'm living in English Bay, and I'm listening to Break the Cycle.
Okay.
Stained.
Yep.
And I'm just listening to this album, and I'm just like, wow. And it's almost kind of talking to me in a sense. Like I'm listening going, okay, did I just quit? Like, I'm like, you know what I mean? And
I love how music can do that.
And it's just like, no, this feels right. So I'm like sitting there and I'm listening to Stained and, reading about Aaron's story and stuff like that. Very, very nice, just a down to earth guy.
Yeah.
And I was always like, man, someday, man, I'd love to, with these new songs that I'm writing and stuff like that. I hadn't shown Jeff yet. And I said, man, someday it would be amazing to open for Stained. Like, just like, because I'm listening to this album and I can hear his voice and the connection.
Outside is one of my, like, I listen to Outside. Oh, God. Yeah.
I'm on the outside. Oh, God. I'm looking in.
Yeah. So good.
Yeah. So it's what happened was, now fast forward.
Yeah.
We're opening up for Stained, Hinder, 3 Doors Down. So we're on this big.
What a great bill that is, by the way.
It's summer tour. It was probably it was an incredible tour. So I'm sitting in the green room, and Aaron comes by and he's like, "Hey, how you guys doing?" We're like, "Oh, we're doing good." And we had a small little green room, and he's like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Not much on your rider." I'm like, "Yeah, we got some water, we got some pop." And whatever. He's like, "No." He goes, "Half our stuff's going on the bus. The other half is going to come into your room." And I'm like, "What?" And I'm like,
"Wow,
yeah." So I'm like, "Okay, that's pretty cool." So he grabs. Wow. So now I start thinking in my head, going, "Is this really happening?" Because a year prior to this, I'm in my room. Not even
1 year.
That's
how fast things can change. Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. I guess it would have been just over a year. Yeah.
How crazy is that?
Yeah, because 3 months later, I'm signing a deal. So yeah, that would make sense because we did the album and then the tour came up. Yeah, about a year.
Change can happen quickly, guys.
And so he grabs the guitar. And as he's grabbing the guitar, everything's going through my head. Like I'm me in my room, writing songs, break the cycle, everything. And I'm like, is this so surreal? And so now what's happening is he starts playing. And he's like, yeah, don't mind doing it. And I'm like, is this really happening? And so he starts playing guitar and just kind of singing. It wasn't a full song, but he's just kind of playing, talking and stuff. And I said, okay, stops. He's like, sorry, guys, I get it. I said, Aaron, you have to understand how surreal this situation. The band doesn't know what I'm about to say because they don't know the story.
No.
So him and I start having this conversation. I said, you have to understand, I was listening to Break the Cycle, right? And then 3 months later, I'm signing a deal. Now I'm out on the road with Stained. Like, this is incredible. And then he starts telling me about, he goes, Rod, the only difference between Jet Black Stare and Stained is, he goes, we've sold whatever, 15 million albums, stuff like that. And he goes, I don't say this as a bragging thing. And I knew he's not that character.
No.
What he's saying is, we worked to get to this. I see that in Jet Black Stare. You guys can do the same thing. And the craziest thing about that whole thing was he did an interview. And someone came up to me and pointed out, because we were literally getting ready to go on stage. So that's even more surreal. He's in our dressing room, and now I go on stage knowing he was just, hanging with us.
A lot of juice in that.
Yeah, a lot of energy.
That would have been a good performance.
Came off stage and somebody came up to me and was talking. He was like, wow, he goes, we just did this big interview with Aaron and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, cool. And he goes, he loves Jet Black Stare. He goes, he was talking about you guys. And he goes, I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, it's very rare that a headliner band would talk about the opener that much in an interview. You only have so much time to talk.
Yeah.
And then to top it off, we finished that tour. And then we get a call from Chief, our manager at the time. And he goes, you won't believe this. He goes, we got a call. Stain wants you to be direct support on the Texas tour. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. He's like, yeah, Aaron loved you guys so much and got along with you guys, and it just showed he's here, we're here, but he brought it down in a conversation where we're all here.
You're all the same.
What is
we
that?
are all the same.
It's a life lesson.
And that's you.
Like, and that's why I do not, and so I always look at it as like, and there's a lot of cool things that happen and going to parties and stuff like that. But really, I'm not here on this earth to brag about accolades and all that kind of stuff. I'm here to talk about moments that impacted my life and hopefully will impact other people when they hear it, is that we're all here.
The cool thing about this is that it's a Rockstar story, but it's also a life lesson, like you say, and that's you.
How I want.
And I hate that we got to end it here, but we got to end it here. But that's Rod Black right there, everybody. Like right there. The Rockstar stories though that also hit you in the heart, and that's what he's all about. I've just loved getting to know you so much. I love what's coming down the pipe. Thank you very much for taking time to do this today, and like I said, more to come.
I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Oh, this has been so awesome.
Yes, for
sure. They go by that quickly. I know I'm a broken record when I say that, but it's true. It's like when we do heCast, it's like a time warp. An hour goes by and it feels like seconds, but I hope that it's not just for me. I hope that you're all feeling that too. Every single message that we get and note about this shows us that we're on the right path, doing the right thing. Whatever it is that you're going through, please, whatever it takes, if He Changed It can be a part of helping you move forward, get out of the dirt, get out of the muck, and start moving forward. We would be honored to help be that for you. Please please share, please subscribe to the podcast. Please download the app, share it out there. Let's change the world. That's what we're going to do. That's what Rod's doing. And that's what He Changed It wants to do with Rod and people like that. This has been another episode of heCast, the official podcast of He Changed It. My name is Mike Chisholm. Go change something.